Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's video will be part 1 in a series of practice problems preparing you for Python interview questions or tests or quizzes. This is going to cover a lot of practice scenarios and writing Python code, but we're not going to focus as much on the tutorials or basic syntax of Python. So if you're unfamiliar with Python in general, on this channel, there's an Introduction to Python tutorial series I would recommend starting with before diving into these problems. I'll leave a link to that because for this series, we'll be assuming you have some basic knowledge of Python. So without any other further delay, let's jump right into it. Problem 1. The parameter weekend is true if it is a weekend, Saturday or Sunday. The parameter vacation is true if we are on vacation. We sleep in if it is a weekend or we're on vacation. Return true if we sleep in. So I suggest pausing the video at this point if you'd like to attempt it on your own. If not, I'll take about a 1-second break, then I'll start talking about solutions to solve the problem. So I recommend pausing now. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we'd solve this. So right away, let's go ahead and define a function, and we'll call it sleep in. This is going to receive two parameters defined as weekend and vacation. And these parameters are going to be Booleans. These are going to be true-false parameters, but you actually don't have to define that anywhere. It's just how it gets used inside the code. So what we're saying is if it is a weekend or if we're on vacation, then we want to return true, telling us sleep in. Remember, return true if we sleep in. And then any other scenario, meaning it's not a weekend and we're not on vacation, we want to return false, meaning we don't get to sleep in. And this is really all we need. The one thing about Booleans, this is the same as saying if the weekend is equal to true or vacation equal to true. This is just the exact same statement as just saying if weekend, because these true false conditions inside Python, these Booleans, you can just say equals or not equals to with if and if not. So that's just one little handy shortcut for Python, but no, if you had equals true in there, that would run just the same. This is just a little faster and a little cleaner. And so to actually test that our code works, you don't just have to take my word for it. We can go ahead and we can test every scenario. So this is fairly easy because we just have two true-false parameters. But we'll actually print all 4 scenarios we could have for this problem. So let's say they're both true, and let's say weekend is false, and then vacation is false, and then they're both false. And now, if we run this, we can actually look at the results and make... Oh, I erased one. That's unfortunate. And if we look at the results that we get from here, we can actually check and make sure the scenarios make sense. So let's go ahead and run this and take a look here. So what we've got is scenario 1 is the weekend and we're on vacation. We return true, meaning we sleep in. If it's not a weekend, but we are on vacation, we return true, meaning we sleep in. If it is a weekend, but we're not on vacation, we still return true, meaning we sleep in. So here we're covering it's just a weekend, it's just vacation, it's a weekend and vacation, and in all of those scenarios, we want to sleep in. The only scenario where we're not getting to sleep in is if it's not a weekend and we're not on vacation, and that's what gives us false. So right here, just in 3-4 lines of code inside a function, we've created a function that handles every scenario for this. So that's problem 1. Problem 2. Given 2 integers, return the sum. Unless the integers are the same, then return double the sum. So this is fairly similar in style to how the previous one was done, just with a little unique twist. So again, if you'd like to solve before going through the solution together, I recommend pausing the video now. Otherwise, let's go ahead and take a look at how we'd write this code. So again, we're going to create a function that's going to check whether or not the integers are the same and determines what to return based off of that. So we'll call that sum or double. And it's going to receive two integers. We'll just call it a and b. You can really call the variables anything you'd like. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called the sum, and we're going to add a and b together. And then we do an additional check to see, make sure you get your spacing right. Then we do another check, and we check if a and b are equivalent. And if they are, then we're just going to take that same sum value and we're going to multiply it times 2. And so this way, outside of the if statement, we return that sum variable. And now you can see if a and b are any two integers that aren't equivalent, we just add them together and return that. But then we check after adding them together if they equal each other. And if they do, we just go ahead and multiply it times 2, and we still return that same variable. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test our code with a few sample scenarios where we run our function sum or double, and we'll give it 1 and a 3 where they're not the same value, and we'll give it 1 where they are the same value. We'll just say 6s. So what we would expect based on our function would be 1 and 3 return 4, 6 and 6 would actually return 24 because it's going to do the sum and then double it. So let's go ahead and see. 4 and 24. And there you have it. I mean, you can play around with this all you want. If you write the code on your own, I recommend testing it with a wide variety of variables just to make sure you don't break it. But you can pretty quickly tell just by testing both scenarios whether or not your code is working. And there's problem 2. Problem 3. Given two integers and a Boolean positive condition, return true if one of the variables is positive. Unless the positive condition is true, then only return true if both integers are positive. So to put that another way, you're going to be given two numbers, and if your positive condition is false, return true as long as one is positive. If the positive condition is true, both numbers have to be positive. I recommend pausing the video now if you'd like to attempt this before we take a look at the solution together. Okay, so let's look at the solution for this problem. It's going to start like the previous ones. We're going to begin defining a function that pulls in all of our values. So we'll call this is positive. And this is going to take two integers, just like the previous example, but then it's also going to take an additional condition we defined as positive. And inside this code, we're going to start by checking to see if positive is true. And if it is, then you're going to return whatever happens by checking if A is greater than 0 and B is greater than 0. So this is a shorthand way of writing what I'll go ahead and show in another way after I've written this code the first time. But first we check if it's positive, and then if it's not, we get to return if A is greater than 0 or B is greater than 0. So if you think through the criteria we were given in the code, we're checking to see if it is positive, A and B have to be greater than 0. If those are both true, this is going to return true. But if it's not true that positive is active, then we can return true as long as A or B is greater than 0. So just like in previous examples, we'll just go ahead and print. What if we have 1, -3, and false? Then we should get a true for that. And then, well, you do have to call the function. I'll go ahead and copy this. And then we'll do one where they're both negative, and that should give us false. And then we'll go ahead and do one where positive is true, and we have one of each. And then we'll go ahead and do one where they're both positive and positive is true. So if we go ahead and run this, you're going to see when positive is false and one value is positive, we get true. but otherwise we get false because they're both negative. But then when positive is true, even though we have one value that's positive, we have a -3, so it returns false. And then when both values are positive and positive is true, that's the condition where we get true. So hopefully that makes sense. One additional way, this is kind of an interesting way to write it. It uses the fewest lines of code possible, but this can confuse some people, realizing that what you're actually doing is creating a Boolean condition inside your return statement. And maybe an easier way to think about this is if you create a variable called solution and you set that equal to your condition. So we would say, well, solution is a Boolean variable checking to see if A and B are positive, and then what we want to do is return the solution, spelled correctly. And you could do the exact same thing here, where you could say the solution is our OR statement. And I think I messed it up. A greater than 0 or B greater than 0. And then we again are going to return the solution. And what you should see when we run this, if I haven't made a mistake, yeah, you get the exact same answers as before, because all we were doing is checking a multivariable Boolean condition inside our return statement. Python is smart enough to handle that, but it's exactly the same as if you use an intermediate variable to store the solution. So that's two ways to look at this problem. And that's going to do it for practice problems video 1. If you found these useful and would like me to cover more in the future, please leave a like and a subscribe. Let me know there's interest in the channel. And feel free to drop a comment asking me to cover something different in the future. I'll be doing a number of these on progressively more complex topics. So if you found it useful, you want something else specific covered, be sure to let me know. And thanks for checking out the channel. Thanks. Bye.